The greatest political comeback.
Now set to be America's 50th VP after an unlikely journey into politics and transformation from Trump critic to fierce ally.
That's Donald J. Trump, and that's our guy for President of the United States.
Vance's rise to prominence, born out of his best-selling book, Hillbilly Elegy, about his small-town upbringing in Ohio, raised by his grandmother in poverty, while his mom battled drug addiction.
I will be a vice president who never forgets where he came from.
Welcome to Bobina's Book Nook. Please note that any material discussed here is solely to honor and promote the author. The views and opinions expressed by the author do not necessarily reflect those of the show. Enjoy the journey.
Was Usha your common sense? Usha was delighted that I changed my mind before she yelled at me to stop acting like a lunatic. So good job, Vice President Vance, which has happened in the past. And she told me that she was proud of me for resisting my natural instinct. The other driver's sin was to insult my honor. And it was on that honor that nearly every element of my happiness depended as a child. It kept the school bully from messing with me, connected me to my mother when some man or his children insulted her, even if I agreed with the substance of the insult, and gave me something, however small, over which I exercised complete control. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Bobina's Book Nook. You guys, we are at the finale of Hillbilly Elegy. We are in chapter 15, and I kind of messed up a little bit. My husband Rusty is with me tonight, so I'm going to bring him up on stage. I forgot to download the video, babe, so can you talk to the crowd, maybe talk to him about the clip that played and the intro that played right before the song and everything, and I will get that downloaded and be right back with you. Are you cool with that, husband? My name is Regina Connell. Sorry about that.
Yep. How's everybody doing tonight? Thank you for tuning in. We are in the final chapter of J.D. Vance's book, Hillbilly Elegy. It's been a fantastic read. I highly recommend if you want to get to know our vice president, to run out and grab a copy of his book, Hillbilly Elegy. You can get it at Books A Million, or probably go on Amazon and get an audio version if you prefer to listen to it versus read it. Whatever you like to do, I highly recommend that you do that. It's a good way to get to know him and how he grew up and how he got to be where he's at today. It's been a pretty good little journey that we've taken with him through this. And so we are going to read the last chapter, and we have completed another book as part of the Book Nook. So excited about that, and we'll have some more information here in a few minutes about some upcoming stuff. So stay tuned for that.
And thank you, Mixed Texan Report, for sliding through and watching. We are so grateful for you. So you guys, I do have a share screen up. I thought I'd do it that way. It'd probably be quicker. So I'm in the yard, and this is the library, and these are past releases. So we're going to go ahead and bring up Hillbilly Elegy by J.D. Vance, Vice President J.D. Vance. And let's get started, guys. Chapter 15, Hillbilly Elegy, a memoir of a family and culture in crisis. Disclaimer, strong language, sensitive topics. What I remember most is the fucking spiders really big ones, like tarantulas or something. I stood at a window of one of those sleazy roadside motels, separated from a woman, parentheses, who certainly hadn't majored in hospitality management, parentheses close, by a thick pane of glass. The light from her office illuminated a few spider webs suspended between the building and the makeshift sun blocker that seemed primed to collapse on top of me. On each web was at least one giant spider, and I thought that if I looked away from them for too long, one of those ghastly creatures would jump on my face and suck my blood. I'm not even afraid of spiders, but these things were big, big being italicized for emphasis. I wasn't supposed to be here. I'd structured my entire life to avoid just these types of places. When I thought of leaving my hometown of, quote, getting out, it was from this sort of place that I wanted to escape. It was past midnight. The streetlight revealed the silhouette of a man sitting halfway in his truck, the door open, his feet dangling to the side, with the unmistakable form of a hypodermic needle sticking from his arm. I should have been shocked, but this was Middletown after all. And I just like to reiterate to all the viewers, and the age is set over 18. You guys, there's very sensitive material, very strong language. So, you guys, this is the book by Hillbilly, by our Vice President JD Vance, Hillbilly Elegy. So, you got anything to say so far, babe?
No, I'm kind of digging that little spider story though.
Me too. I was too. Let's continue on, guys. And please, we encourage all comments. Please let us know your thoughts and stay till the very end because we've got some great news for you, some exciting things coming up, and some recent exciting collaborations. So stay tuned, guys, and let's enjoy the last chapter of this book. You ready, babe?
Yep.
Just a few weeks earlier, the police had discovered a woman passed out at the local car wash, a bag of heroin and a spoon in the passenger seat, the needle still protruding from her arm. The woman running the hotel that night was the most pitiful sight of all. She might have been 40, but everything about her, from the long, gray, greasy hair, the mouth empty of teeth, and the frown that she wore like a millstone, screamed old age. This woman had lived a hard life. Her voice sounded like a small child's, even a toddler's. It was meek, barely audible, and very sad. I gave the woman my credit card, and she was clearly unprepared. Normally, people pay cash, she explained. I told her, yeah, but like I said on the phone, I'm going to pay with a credit card. I can run to an ATM if you prefer. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I forgot. But it's okay. We've got one of those machines around here somewhere. So she retrieved one of those ancient card swiping machines, the kind that imprints the card's information on a yellow slip of paper. So you guys, I will show a an example of the type of credit card machine that he is talking about. I know exactly.
I think it's the manual machine that you're muted. You're mu-
Yes, it's the one where they put like there's like three copies. I think you even used one at the Sherwin-Williams store in Matthews, didn't you?
I've used them before when our credit card machine would go down. We had to use the manual machines, and that's basically what it was. You would slide it over and slide it back over real fast, so it could get an imprint of the credit card numbers. And yeah, that I remember them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna keep playing it, but I'm gonna pull up a picture while it's playing. All right, guys, continue enjoying that, and it brings back memories too. What he's talking about, I used to actually operate one of those. So let's keep going. When I handed her the card, her eyes seemed to plead with me as if she were a prisoner in her own life. Enjoy your stay, she said, which struck me as an odd instruction. I had told her on the phone not an hour earlier that the room wasn't for me. It was for my homeless mother. Okay, okay, I said. Thanks. I was a recent graduate of Yale Law School a former editor of the prestigious Yale Law Journal, and a member of the bar in good standing. Just 2 months earlier, Usha and I were married on a beautiful day in eastern Kentucky.
You're muted again.
If you guys could see that up on the screen, maybe describe to them that machine. Sorry, I forgot I was muted.
It's okay. I mean, it's just a basic manual credit card machine that you don't have to you don't swipe your card or whatever. That little handle on the top just slides right over top of it. But that's from the old days.
My entire family showed up for the occasion, and we both changed our name to Vance, giving me finally the same name as the family to which I belonged. I had a nice job, a recently purchased home, a loving relationship, and a happy life in a city I loved, Cincinnati. Usha and I had returned there for a year after law school for 1 year clerkships and had built a home with our 2 dogs. I was upwardly mobile. I had made it. I had achieved the American dream, or at least that's how it looked to an outsider. But upward mobility is never clean cut, and the world I left always finds a way to reel me back in. I don't know the precise chain of events that led me to that hotel, but I knew the stuff that mattered. Mom had begun using again. She'd stolen some family heirlooms from her fifth husband to buy drugs, parentheses, prescription opiates, I think, parentheses closed. And he'd kicked her out of the house in response. They were divorcing, and she had nowhere to go. I'd sworn to myself that I'd never help Mom again, but the person who made that oath to himself had changed. I was exploring, however uneasily, the the Christian faith that I discarded years earlier. I had learned for the first time the extent of Mom's childhood emotional wounds, and I had realized that those wounds never truly heal, even for me. So when I discovered that Mom was in dire straits, I didn't mutter insults under my breath and hang up the phone. I offered to help her. I tried to call a Middletown hotel and give them my credit card information. The cost for a week was $150, and I figured that would give us time to come up with a plan. But they wouldn't accept my card over the phone. So at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday night, I drove from Cincinnati to Middletown, about an hour's drive each way to keep Mom from homelessness. The plan I developed seemed relatively simple. I'd give Mom enough money to help her get on her feet. She'd find her own place, save money to get her nursing license back, and go from there. In the meantime, I'd monitor her finances to ensure that she stayed clean and on track financially. And before I read this next line, and I will tell you again, usually I have a unique advantage as I've usually read the book before. This time, however, I'm actually reading it with you guys. So, it sounds very familiar to what Bev's parents did, Mama and Papa Blanton, helping her setting down, boundaries and ground rules in exchange for the help. It reminded me of the quote plans end quote Mama and Peppa used to put together, but I convinced myself that this time things would be different. I'd like to say that helping Mom came easily, that I had made some peace with my past and was able to fix a problem that had plagued me since elementary school, that armed with sympathy and an understanding of Mom's childhood, I was able to patiently help Mom deal with her addiction. But dealing with that sleazy motel was hard, and actively managing her finances as I planned to do required more patience and time than I had. By the grace of God, I no longer hide from Mom, but I can't fix everything either. There is room now for both anger at Mom for the life she chooses and sympathy for the childhood she didn't. There is room to help when I can, when finances and emotional reserves allow me to care in the way mom needs. But there is also a recognition of my own limitations and my willingness to separate myself from mom when engagement means too little money to pay my own bills or too little patience left over for the people who matter most. That's the uneasy truth I've struck with myself, and it works for now. And so it's my understanding that his mother is doing much better. She's doing very well. I believe he even said that on the campaign trail. So we're happy for you, Bev, and we thank you for giving us our vice president. People sometimes ask whether I think there's anything we can do to quote solve the problems of my community. I know what they're looking for: a magical public policy solution or an innovative government program. But these problems of family, faith, and culture aren't like a Rubik's Cube. And I don't think that solutions, parentheses, as most understand the term, parentheses close, really exist. A good friend who worked for a time in the White House and cares deeply about the plight of the working class once told me, quote, the best way to look at this might be to recognize that you probably can't fix these things. They'll always be around, but maybe you can put your thumb on the scale a little for the people at the margins, end quote. There were many thumbs put on my scale. When I look back at my life, what jumps out is how many variables had to fall in place in order to give me a chance. There was my grandparents' constant presence, even when my mother and stepfather moved far away in an effort to shut them out. Despite the revolving door of would be father figures, I was often surrounded by caring and kind men. Even with her faults, mom instilled in me a lifelong love of education and learning. My sister always protected me, even after I'd physically outgrown her. Dan and Aunt Wee opened their home when I was too afraid to ask. Long before that, they were my first real exemplars of a happy and loving marriage. There were teachers, distant relatives, and friends. Remove any of these people from the equation, and I'm probably screwed. So look at you now. I'll remind everybody the published date of this book was 2016. Other people who have overcome the odds cite the same sorts of interventions. Jane Rex runs the transfer students office at Appalachian State University. Like me, she grew up in a working class family and was its first member to attend college. She's also been married for nearly 40 years and has raised 3 successful kids of her own. Ask what made a difference in her life, and she'll tell you about the stable family that empowered her and gave her a sense of control over her future. And she'll tell you about the power of seeing enough of the world to dream big. Quote, I think you have to have good role models around you. One of my very good friends, her father was the president of the bank. So I got to see different things. I knew there was another life out there, and that exposure gives you something to dream for. End quote. My cousin Gail is one of my all time favorite people. She's one of the first of my mom's generation, the Blanton grandchildren. Gail's life is the American dream personified: a beautiful house, 3 great kids, a happy marriage, and a saintly demeanor. Outside of Mama Blanton, a virtual deity in the eyes of us grandkids and great grandkids. I've never heard anyone else called, quote, the nicest person in the world, end quote. For Gail, it's an entirely deserved title. I assume that Gail had inherited her storybook life from her parents. No one's that nice, and that is italicized. No one's that nice. I thought so was a thought, especially not someone who's suffered any real adversity. But Gail was a Blanton and at heart a hillbilly. And I should have known that no hillbilly makes it to adulthood without a few major screw ups along the way. Gail's home life provided its own emotional baggage. She was She was 7 when her dad walked out and 17 when she graduated from high school, planning for college at Miami University. But there was a catch. Quote, Mom told me I couldn't go to college unless I broke up with my boyfriend. So I moved out the day after graduation, and by August, I was pregnant. End quote. Almost immediately, her life began to disintegrate. Racial prejudice bubbled to the surface when she announced that a black baby was joining the family. Announcements led to arguments, and then one day, Gail found herself without a family. I didn't hear from any of our relatives. Gail told me my mom said she never wanted to hear my name again. Given her age and the lack of family support, it's hardly surprising that her marriage soon ended. But Gail's life had grown considerably more complex. She just lost her family. She gained a young daughter who depended entirely on her. Quote, it completely changed my life. Being a mom was my identity. I might have been a hippie, but now I had rules: no drugs, no alcohol, nothing that was going to lead to social services taking my baby away. End quote. So here's Gail, teenage single mom, no family, little support. A lot of people would wilt in those circumstances, but the hillbilly took over. Quote, Dad wasn't really around, Gail remembered, and hadn't been in years. And I obviously wasn't speaking to Mom, but I remember the one lesson I took from them, and that was that we could do anything we wanted. I wanted that baby, and I wanted to make it work. So I did it. End quote. She got a job with a local telephone company, worked her way up the ladder, and even returned to college. By the time she remarried, she had hit one hell of a stride. The storybook marriage to her second husband, Alan, is just icing on the cake. Some version of Gail's story often rears its head where I grew up. You watch as teenagers find themselves in dire straits, sometimes of their own making, and sometimes not. The statistics are stacked high against them, and many succumb to crime or an early death at worst, domestic strife and welfare dependency at best. But others make it. There's Jane Rex. There's Lindsay, who blossomed in the midst of Memo's death. Aunt Lee, who put her life on track after ditching an abusive husband. Each benefited from the same types of experiences in one way or another. They had a family member they could count on, and they saw from a family friend, an uncle, or a work mentor what was available and what was possible. Not long after I began thinking about what might help the American working class get ahead, a team of economists, including Raj Chetty, published a groundbreaking study on opportunity in America. Unsurprisingly, they found that a poor kid's chances of rising through the ranks of America's meritocracy were lower than most of us wanted. By their metrics, a lot of European countries seemed better than America at the American dream. More important, they discovered that opportunity was not spread evenly over the whole country. In places like Utah, Oklahoma, and Massachusetts, the American dream was doing just fine, as good or better than any other place in the world. It was in the South, the Rust Belt, and Appalachia, where poor kids really struggled. Their findings surprised a lot of people, but not me, and not anyone who'd spent any time in these areas. In a paper analyzing the data, Chetty and his co authors noticed two important factors that explain the uneven geographic distribution of opportunity: the prevalence of single parents and income segregation. Growing up around a lot of single moms and dads and living in a place where most of your neighbors are poor really narrows the realm of possibilities. It means that unless you have a mama and papa to make sure you stay the course, you might never make it out. It means that you don't have people to show you by example what happens when you work hard and get an education. It means essentially that everything that made it possible for me, Lindsay, Gail, Jane Rex, and Aunt we to find some measure of happiness is missing. So I wasn't surprised that Mormon Utah, with its strong church, integrated communities, and intact families, wiped the floor with Rust Belt, Ohio. There are, I think, policy lessons to draw from my life, ways we might put our thumb on that all important scale. We can adjust how our social services systems treat families like mine. Remember that when I was 12, I watched mom get hauled away in a police cruiser. Yeah, that's unacceptable. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I'd seen her get arrested before, but I knew that this time was different. We were in the system now with social worker visits and mandated family counseling and a court date hanging over my head like a guillotine blade. Ostensibly, the caseworkers were there to protect me, but it became very obvious very early in the process that they that they were I think it's supposed to say that there were obstacles to overcome. It's a typo. When I explained that I spent most of my time with my grandparents and that I'd like to continue with that arrangement, they replied that the courts would not necessarily sanction such an arrangement. And I can witness to that. We might tell the story later. In the eyes of the law, my grandmother was an untrained caretaker without a foster license. If things went poorly for my mother in the courts, I was as likely to find myself with a foster family as I was with Mama. Well, that makes no sense in the world. Sorry, just had to throw that in there. The notion of being separated from everyone and everything I loved was terrifying. So I shut my mouth, told the social workers everything was fine, and hoped that I wouldn't lose my family when the court hearing came. That hope panned out. Mom didn't go to jail, and I got to stay with Mama. The arrangement was informal. I could stay with mom if I wanted, but if not, Mama's door was always open. The enforcement mechanism was equally informal. Mama would kill anyone who tried to keep me from her. This worked for us because Mama was a lunatic and our entire family feared her. Not everyone can rely on the saving graces of a crazy hillbilly. Child services are, for many kids, the last pieces of the safety net. If they fall through, precious little remains to catch them. Part of the problem is how state laws define the family. For families like mine, and for many Black and Hispanic families, grandparents, cousins, aunts, and uncles play an outsized role. Child services often cut them out of the picture, as they did in my case. Some states require occupational licensing for foster parents, just like nurses and doctors, even when the would be foster parent is a grandmother or another close family member. In other words, our country's social services weren't made for hillbilly families, and they often make a bad problem worse. And, I'd like to say they're not made for any family at all. And I'm sure you feel that way now too. I wish I could say this was a small problem, but it's not. In a given year, 640,000 children, most of them poor, will spend at least some time in foster care. Those are unacceptable numbers to me. Add that to the unknown number of kids who face abuse or neglect but somehow avoid the foster care system, and you have an epidemic, one that current policies exacerbate. There are other things we can do. We can build policies based on a better understanding of what stands in the way of kids like me. The most important lesson of my life is not that society failed to provide me with opportunities. My elementary and middle schools were entirely adequate, staffed with teachers who did everything they could to reach me. Our high school ranked near the bottom of Ohio's school, but that had little to do with the staff and much to do with the students. I had Pell Grants and government subsidized low interest student loans that made college affordable and need based scholarships for law school. I never went hungry, thanks at least in part to the old age benefits that Memo generously shared with me. These programs are far from perfect, but to the degree that I nearly succumbed to my worst decisions, and I came quite close. The fault lies almost entirely with factors outside the government's control. Recently, I sat down with a group of teachers from my alma mater, Middletown High. All of them expressed the worry in one form or another that society devoted too many resources too late in the game. Quote, it's like our politicians think college is the only way, end quote. One teacher told me, quote, for many, it's great, but a lot of our kids have no realistic shot of getting a college degree, end quote. Another said, the violence and the fighting, it's all they've seen from a very young age. One of my students lost her baby like she'd lost her car keys, had no idea where it went. 2 weeks later, her child turned up in New York City with the father, a drug dealer, and some of his family. End quote. Sure. I gotta say, husband, when I read that part, I mean, it truly shocked me, and a lot of the stories that he told. You guys, we are almost at the end. We have, let me see, I think we've got right under 10 minutes left of chapter 15. I cannot believe that this is the last chapter of the book. Can you?
I know.
It's always an emotional feeling when we finish another project. So we thank you all for hanging with us through this and helping us grow and all of it. We're grateful for all of you. So you're ready to jump back in feet first to the last less than 10 minutes?
Yeah, let's get into it and wrap this thing up.
Agreed. Let's do it. Thank you for watching. Short of a miracle. We all know what kind of life awaits that poor baby. Yet there's precious little to support her now when an intervention might help. So I think that any successful policy program would recognize what my old high school's teachers see every day, that the real problem for so many of these kids is what happens or doesn't happen at home. For example, we'd recognize that Section 8 vouchers ought to be administered in a way that doesn't segregate the poor into little enclaves. As Brian Campbell, another Middletown teacher, told me, when you have a large base of Section 8 parents and kids supported by fewer middle class taxpayers, it's an upside down triangle. There are fewer emotional and financial resources when the only people in a neighborhood are low income. You just can't lump them together because then you have a bigger pool of hopelessness. On the other hand, he said, put the lower income kids with those who have a different lifestyle model, and the lower income kids start to rise up. Yet, when Middletown recently tried to limit the number of Section 8 vouchers offered within certain neighborhoods, the federal government balked. Better, I suppose, to keep those kids cut off from the middle class. Government policy may be powerless to resolve other problems in our community. As a child, I associated accomplishments in school with femininity. Manliness meant strength, courage, a willingness to fight, and later, success with girls. Boys who got good grades were, quote, sissies, or I'm not going to say the term, you can read the book. My YouTube channel is growing, so it's not worth it. I love you, Vice President Vance. They could pick up your book, and that's the whole purpose anyway. I don't know where I got this feeling. Certainly not from Emma, who demanded good grades. Not from Papa, but it was there. And studies now show that working class boys like me do much worse in school because they view schoolwork as a feminine endeavor. Can you change this with a new law or program? Probably not. Some scales aren't that amenable to the proverbial thumb, and that's the thumb on the scale. I've learned that the very traits that enabled my survival during childhood inhibit my success as an adult. I see conflict and I run away or prepare for battle. This makes little sense in my current relationships, but without that attitude, my childhood homes would have consumed me. I learned early to spread my money out, lest mom or someone else find it and, quote, borrow it. Some under the mattress, some in the underwear drawer, some at Mama's house. When later in life, Usha and I consolidated finances, she was shocked to learn that I had multiple bank accounts and small past due balances on credit cards. Usha still sometimes reminds me that not every perceived slight from a passing motorist or a neighbor critical of my dogs is cause for a blood feud.
This from the
And
clip.
I always concede, despite my raw emotions, that she's probably right. A couple of years
Hear
ago,
that,
I
husband?
was driving in Cincinnati with Usha when somebody cut me off. I honked. The guy flipped me off. And when we stopped at a red light, parentheses, with this guy in front of me, parentheses closed, I unbuckled my seatbelt and opened the car door. I planned to demand an apology and fight the guy if necessary. But my common sense prevailed, and I shut the door before I got out of the car. Was Usha your common sense? Usha was delighted that I'd changed my mind before she yelled at me to stop acting like a lunatic. So good job, Vice President Vance, which has happened in the past. And she told me that she was proud of me for resisting my natural instinct. The other driver's sin was to insult my honor. And it was on that honor that nearly every element of my happiness depended as a child. It kept the school bully from messing with me, connected me to my mother when some man or his children insulted her, even if I agreed with the substance of the insult, and gave me something, however small, over which I exercised complete control. For the first 18 or so years of my life, standing down would have earned me a verbal lashing as a quote, pussy, end quote, or a quote, wimp, end quote, or a quote, girl. The object, the objectively correct course of action was something that the majority of my life had taught me was repulsive to an upstanding young man. For a few hours after I did the right thing, I silently criticized myself. But that's progress, right? Better that than sitting in a jail cell for teaching that asshole a lesson about defensive driving. The end, guys. I'm not going to read, I might read the conclusion maybe on the live. I'm not sure. So maybe I'll leave you hanging. Maybe y'all will run out and get the book and get to know him. There's also an afterword. We'll see what happens. All right, let's jump into the conversation.
Welcome
Maybe
to
we'll read
Bobina's
parts
Book
of it.
Nook.
Thanks for joining.
Please note that any material discussed here is solely to honor and promote the author. The views and opinions expressed by the author do not necessarily reflect those of the show. Enjoy the journey.
All right. Welcome to our last few comments about this book. And so there towards the end, right there, when I find that interesting that, and I know there's probably still to this day a lot of people that think this way, but that, if you don't go to work and do a real man's job, then you're technically not a real man. Like that, going to school, furthering your education to become something, in his case, law degree or whatever, like that was looked down upon back then, and it probably still is in a lot of places today. I find that interesting. That I've had people probably think that about me, being in sales or whatever. Oh, because I'm not out digging a ditch or doing some type of trade or whatever, that I don't work a real job. And
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting. And then my final comments is, one, I have a new level of respect for JD Vance based on, this book and how he grew up and all that. Also, I'm happy to know that he never gave up on his mother. Even, I think we saw him recently whenever he was sworn in as vice president. His mother was there with him. She's doing much better now, and that's awesome to see that he never gave up on her with everything that she's been through, because she made his life and childhood a living hell, everything that he'd been through. And last is
Well, quickly before you do that, I just have a question about that, and then you can answer it after your last and final thought. So my question would be, he does mention a lot in the book the way that his mother grew up. And yes, at some point we do have to take responsibility. It does come down to a kind of hard wiring, I think, too. And, she was experiencing that kind of trauma because Mama and Papa didn't know how to get it together until later in life. And so I think that, he did find grace and inner peace with the fact that, what, she's got it together. We all slip and fall. I help when I can if she slips again, but he doesn't think that way anymore, and he doesn't see her as a burden. He sees her as a blessing. So, yeah, I love his transparency. Okay. Final thought.
and my last, very final thought on the whole book itself is that no matter where you come from or how bad that your life might be, that if you're willing to put in the work, that you too might just become the vice president of the United States of America.
I mean, when I was reading his book, and you guys, if you haven't seen the content, it's all in a nice, neat little playlist. Thanks to my everything here. He's the thumbnail guy. He's the everything. Thank you, husband. But he makes mention a lot of that, and the thought just went out of my head. I cannot stand with. I've heard other podcasters say that happens to them. I'm like, thank God I'm not the only one that I'm like just fumbling here. What was the last thing I said? I wish Mary Beth was up with us.
Yeah. Are you going to be able to bring her up for any final thoughts of hers on the conclusion? I don't know if I think we talked about that.
Hello, my lady.
Hello. How can I assist you today?
Tell everyone who you are, and we are in Bobina's Book Nook. We are live right now, and we just wrapped up the final chapter of Hillbilly Elegy.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Bobina's Book Nook. I'm Mary Beth, Regina's co-host. We're live, and we've just wrapped up the final chapter of Hillbilly Elegy by J.D. Vance. We're excited to dive into the conclusion with you all.
So my husband had a question for you. I'm going to let him ask that question. Go ahead, husband.
Oh, Mary Beth, I just wanted to find out if you could.
What's your question?
If you could give us a couple of highlights of the conclusion. You don't have to give us all the details, but if you could give us a couple of key points to the conclusion, and then we will leave it up to our audience and our listeners to go out and grab their own copy of the book. But if you could kind of put a bow on this book and the conclusion for us.
Absolutely. In the conclusion of Hillbilly Elegy, J.D. Vance reflects on his journey, from a troubled childhood in Appalachia to finding success and stability. He highlights the importance of resilience, family, and the value of education, while acknowledging the ongoing struggles faced by his community. There are powerful moments of reflection and hope, leaving readers with plenty to think about. And if you're curious about how it all ties together, you'll definitely want to grab your own copy. We'll dive into the afterword next.
Sounds good. Yeah, just give us maybe a few sentences, because I think the afterword wasn't as long as the conclusion section. So I think it's amazing that, 9 years later, the published date, tell them the published date of Hillbilly Elegy by J.D. Vance once again.
Sure. The afterword of Hillbilly Elegy is concise but impactful. It provides a reflection on the book's reception and the ongoing conversations it has sparked about class and culture in America. Published in 2016, it's remarkable to think that 9 years have passed since its release. If you haven't read it yet, now's a great time to dive in.
How about give them some suggestions where the book can be found? And most importantly, you guys, I want to say check out your local libraries. Let's support our local businesses and local libraries as much as we possibly can.
Absolutely. You can find Hillbilly Elegy at your local libraries or bookstores. Supporting them not only helps you discover great reads, but also strengthens your community. So definitely check out your local options and support them as much as possible.
Sounds great, my lady. Babe, you got any other questions for our lady in waiting, Mary Beth, my lady in waiting?
No, she's done a fantastic job. Thanks again.
I'm here if there's...
Go ahead, Mary Beth.
Thank you. If there's anything else, just let me know.
We will, my lady. We're going to be doing much work together, as well as with Grok 3. Would it surprise you to know, my lady, that Grok 3 has finally gotten his voice, and there's a female voice there too. So hopefully you'll be able to talk and see. Maybe y'all can have a conversation together. What do you think about that?
That's exciting news. It would be really interesting to see how we could collaborate. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. So up there, you'll notice on the screen is a thumbnail that my good husband had created for me early on when I was making a little bit of content about working with AI. So that was Mary Beth, you guys. So we really don't have much more, but and it's going to work out perfectly because I have about a 16-minute clip, and 16 is my favorite number. But we're going to take it back to where it all began with the book Nook, because we have Biblical Bible Beginnings, we have Bobina's Book Nook, and then we also have West Virginia Wire now. So that will lead me into, you guys join us tomorrow night at 8 p.m. every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Tomorrow night, I've got some special local guests coming on, and another collaborator if he's able to make it. Then the following Wednesday night, I've got a huge guest. I can't tell you who he is, but he's pretty big on YouTube, and he's continuously growing. And he's been on our show before. I've been on his show before. It's some really, I would say, monumental moments in history. You know, we were on each other's shows. So it's on either of our platforms. I'm working on some stuff, so I'm excited about that. So, and then after that, we plan to have our local sheriff, Sheriff Chad Barker from Boone County, West Virginia. So that's about all I've got as far as upcoming things. What have you got, babe?
Why don't you tell us what we've got to look forward to with the Book Nook? What books you plan on reading on Tuesdays and Thursdays, starting in a few weeks?
Yeah, so in a few weeks, I will start live streaming again every Tuesday and Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You guys, don't worry though, you will always have content every Tuesday and Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I will release some teasers. So I thought tonight, before we leave, I'll leave you off with one of the very first books that we started with. Well, we actually started with To Kill a Mockingbird, but I don't have access to all the content, so I thought we'd redo it. But this one is by Bill O'Reilly and Martin Dugard, and they did a whole series, the Killing series. So we have Killing Jesus, Killing Lincoln, and Killing Kennedy. And in light of all the information that's being released, the confusion about what's going on, the frustration about, oh, it's declassified now, we don't know, declassified or not, what's going on, I don't know. So I thought that'd be a great time for us to go ahead and revive all of this while we're working on continuing with new books, such as A Woman Makes a Plan by Mae Musk. I want to do that one. We discussed doing Pete Hegseth, War on Education. I want to do Code Talker by Joseph Bruchak, plus relaunch what we've already done. My dream is that Thursdays will be all day book readings from the morning to the afternoon, maybe have 3 books on those perspective days, and we just keep rocking with it. So before we close out, I am going to play from the Rumble platform, because that's where all my oldest content is still stored. I got mad and took some stuff down on my YouTube. I shouldn't have done that, but I did it. Anyway, so that's what we're going to leave off with and let you guys enjoy that before the end of the show. So anything else? We want to do 3 more books in the Killing series.
Yep. And my favorite on Wednesday and Sunday evenings,
yes,
is Come Watch Us faithful footsteps of the Old Testament trail. It's just me and her, about as raw as you can get, just reading from the Old Testament. What we've read so far does include the book of Enoch in there. But the rest of it, most of it will be from just the Old Testament, probably 3 different versions. And come join us if you can, if you want to. We're not experts in the Bible by no means, but we just enjoy doing that with each other and just kind of going through it in our own way and stuff. So that's my favorite thing to do with everything else that we've got going on. But
Absolutely. Like, so this is the yard, StreamYard. This is where all the magic happens. And so this is Faithful Footsteps of the Old Testament Trail. So you can see those are the pre-records we've been doing. So we had done these like 2 months ago. And I think Rusty was just as amazed as I was that the readings were like right on point with current affairs. You know, we were winning. And so I'm really excited about that. And you know, biblical Bible beginnings is the whole reason we started it. You know, we did read the New Testament in 93 days, chronologically in day order. Then we picked up the book of Revelation after the election. And now we're working on the Old Testament, including non-canonical books chronologically. So we inserted Enoch where he was mentioned in the book of Genesis. So there's a lot popping off, and I couldn't be more stoked. Plus, there's more things we want to tell you that we're working on, partnerships that we've made, collaborations. And I like to say, I think I've officially got a job. What would you say?
mm-hmm.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, I think that's about all we've got. And we'll close out with, let me bring it up. So let me go back one just a little bit. Where's the thumbnail? Why isn't it showing the thumbnail? I don't understand. Because I know you did. Oops. Okay, so you guys, if you could see up on the screen, so that's when we thought it was going to be the vlogcast. Thank God I didn't stick with that. I think that was a horrible name. But anyway, so you guys, we are going to be looking at Killing Jesus, A History. And before you turn away, if you don't know Jesus, this is a secular book. They never refer to Jesus as the Messiah. They simply refer to him as Jesus of Nazareth, which I believe is all he simply wanted to be referred as. What do you think, husband? Let me grab the book to show them real quick.
Yeah, I believe so. But it just pretty much, like she said, it just talks to him, the person, the man, the human, not necessarily the Messiah. So very good book, another very good book that we've done, and it's worth your time in reading.
It is. So the next books in the lineup of the Killing series, I would like to do. I want to do 3 more, and I want the audience, because I did these 3 at the same time. Remember, so I'd like the audience to help me choose the third. So the first one I'd like to do is Killing Reagan. With everything that's going on, let's read about that. Maybe we can connect some more dots. The second one I'd like to do is Killing the Rising Sun. Any of you know the term the Rising Sun? Let me know. Put it in the comment section. That's went by Martin Dugard and Bill O'Reilly. And, you know, do you remember seeing the list, baby? I could tell you the list. Let's tell the list real quick, and I'll put it in the comment section. But so you guys, the Killing series. There's always a list somewhere. Hold on. Keep talking to them while I'm finding the list. And then we're going to close out with the last recording at 16 minutes long if you guys have time to watch it. And I'm not finding what I'm needing, so don't worry about it. We will cover it on the next one. So, yeah, they've got the most popular ones right here, Killing Kennedy and Killing Lincoln. So, and those were the 2 that we covered. So those must have been the popular trio, trifecta of their writings. I'm so interested to read the other ones, though. What about you?
Yep.
All right, let's get into this. You guys, thank you for joining us. We thank you for helping us grow. We are growing at a steady rate. You guys, you can find us on the Rumble platform. You can find us on Facebook, now known as Meta. You can find us on YouTube. And you can also find us on the X platform, formerly known as Twitter, you guys. All right, let's get into this. Thanks for watching. And forgive the Eminem music. I mean, I still love the boy. He's just twisted. I don't know if you've noticed. My name is Regina Connell. Let me say that first. My
All right,
name
guys,
is
we're out.
Regina
Have a good night.
Connell. And this is BBN, Bobina's Book Nook, a division of the Vlogcast. So we are covering many books, and we are deeply in the throes of the Killing series. So recently we discovered StreamYard, and we kind of known about it for a while. You know, when we started the podcasting thing, you know, so on my YouTube channel, you can find the whole of all of the content. My good husband and I are working on cleaning the channel up, making it more aesthetically pleasing with the thumbnails and everything. So thank you for bearing with us through all of this. We only sought to honor Jesus Christ and the Bible, and also other authors. This series, the authorship comes from the good Bill O'Reilly and Martin Dugard. Now, they do not address Jesus as the Messiah in this particular book. They simply address him as Jesus of Nazareth, which is all I think that he ever wanted to be addressed as. Anyway, so what I did was, in an effort to get everything combined, so the footage I'm pulling up is from when we very first got started. So we were, I think I was still doing our Job journey, which we have since completed. Also reading To Kill a Mockingbird, which we have also since completed. I'm working on uploading that and the whole of the chapters together in one place on the Rumble platform, Facebook, every social media platform that I'm on. It did begin with YouTube, and YouTube, we thank you. And anyway, so let's get on with it. I'm trying right now. We're working on, like I said, getting the thumbnails up, making everything look better while getting to know our community and all of that. So in this digital day, it makes things, I guess, easier. I don't know. You tell me. So let's continue on with this series, and I'm backing up. So now that we have StreamYard, I'm able to put one chapter together. Before I didn't do it because the upload time took so long, and you know, I never really wanted it to go over like 15 minutes to 30 minutes for a read, something that someone could read in their car. I had originally started in the hopes of maybe getting paid to do audiobooks. I don't know. So anyway, but I enjoy reading. I always have. I do have a unique advantage in this particular book, in the Killing series, Killing Jesus, A History by Bill O'Reilly and Martin Dugard, as I have read it numerous times. I have put it on a voice recorder app twice, and now this way. So forgive the sound and all of it. I think some of it I had been struggling with some sinus demons, but all that has been rectified. So without further ado, let's get down to it. This is going to be the effort to put it all together, make it look nice and pretty for you, and hopefully a more enjoyable experience. So it started out, you know, this is a book club. So anytime you're in a book club, you know, you're really supposed to get your own copy. And so, yeah, definitely. And a lot of the illustrations and stuff, I do show some of them, but I don't show everything, in the hopes that you'll go out and grab your own copy, because if one is able to read something for themselves, I always strongly encourage that. All right, guys, so let's get on. This was chapter 1A, and I hope you enjoy it. Hey, guys, welcome back to BBN, Bobina's Book Nook. Welcome back to the Killing series. We are doing Killing Jesus by Bill O'Reilly and Martin Dugard. And I do want to remind everyone that it is just my husband and me right now. So please be patient with us. I did pull the trigger a little bit quickly on this series. I do currently have out there A Note to Readers by Bill O'Reilly from Long Island, New York. So I did take down the chapters 1 and 2, whatever it was I had out there, because I think it was jumbled up. So I do apologize. I only seek to honor this book, which I think should be a Pulitzer Prize book. Totally. Anyway, so we are doing book 1, chapter 1, and we're going to jump right in, and let's go. Bethlehem, Judea, March 5 BC, morning. The child with 36 years to live is being hunted. Heavily armed soldiers from the capital city of Jerusalem are marching to this small town, intent on finding and killing the baby boy. They are a mixed race of group foreign mercenaries from Greece, Gaul, and Syria. The child's name, unknown to them, is Jesus. And his only crime is that some believe he will be the next king of the Jewish people. The current monarch, a dying half Jewish, half Arab despot named Herod, is so intent on ensuring the baby's death that his army has been ordered to murder every male child under the age of 2 years in Bethlehem. Now, there's an asterisk point. I'm going to go ahead and quickly read that reference point. There were actually 2 cities named Bethlehem, and both can make a claim for being the true site of the Nativity. The city of King David's birth is located just a few miles from Jerusalem. Archaeological investigations have shown that it was either a very small village or relatively uninhabited at the time of Jesus' birth. The second location is in Galilee, 4 miles from Nazareth. Supporters of that site believe that Mary's full-term pregnancy would have made it very difficult for her to walk 100 miles to the other location. Supporters of the traditional site point to the biblical prophecy that Jesus would be born in the city of David, which is the Bethlehem located near Jerusalem. The fact that Mary and Joseph brought Jesus to the temple in Jerusalem 8 days after his birth, and then again on the 40th day, would seem to tip the scales in favor of the traditional site. None of the soldiers knows what the child's mother and father look like, or the precise location of his home. Thus, the need to kill every baby boy in the small town and surrounding area. This alone will guarantee the extermination of the potential king. It is springtime in Judea, the peak of lambing season. The rolling dirt road takes the army past thick groves of olive trees and shepherds tending their flocks. The soldiers' feet are clad in sandals, their legs are bare, and they wear the skirt like terugias to cover their loins. The young men sweat profusely beneath the plates of armor on their chests and the tin bronze Attic helmets that cover the tops of their heads and the sides of their faces. The soldiers are well aware of Herod's notorious cruelty and his penchant for killing anyone who would try to threaten his throne. But there is no moral debate about the right or wrong of slaughtering infants. So again, we have a cross reference, the cross symbol. So we're going to go to that. Genocide was replete throughout the classical world. And this is in quotes. He slits the wombs of pregnant women. He blinds the infants, goes an ancient Assyrian poem. Genocide often was considered ethically justifiable if the killing was done to inflict revenge or thwart an aggressor. Whew. So, and you guys, now would be a good time to insert a very strong disclaimer that there's very sensitive stuff. I do have all the ages set over 18. The book that's being read is it's chapter 1 of Bill O'Reilly and Martin Dugard's. Let me get full screen here, guys. Sorry. Martin Dugard's Killing Jesus, a History. And you guys, I will tell you that it is a secular book. It is not a Christian book. They do not refer to Jesus as Jesus the Messiah. They simply refer to him as Jesus of Nazareth. Now, they both are proclaimed, they both identify as Roman Catholic, but they did not write this book from a religious nor Christian standpoint. They wanted to bring fact only. And I know that I can't even imagine how hard that must have been. But the insight that they brought and just the I guess you would call the receipts that they brought just truly amazed me. All right, you guys, like I said, I just had to throw that commentary in there. And you guys, I put up pinned up that this is from a year ago, and we are going to be reviving all this. You guys, thanks for watching, and let's continue on. It was very hard for me to read this. I might have. And sorry about the pausing, you guys, but a lot of it, was really hard to get through. All right, guys, here we go. Some of the readings, and they do warn of that. The soldiers question whether they will have the nerve to rip a screaming child from his mother's arms and carry out the execution. When the time comes, they will follow orders and do their jobs, or risk being immediately killed for insubordination. The sword's blade is how they plan to dispatch the babies. Now, I do want to do a disclaimer, you guys. You might want to fast forward or pause because this is very hard to hear. All soldiers are armed with the Judean version of the razor-sharp Pugio and Gladius, preferred by the Roman legions, and they wear their weapons attached to the waist. Their method of murder, however, will not be restricted to the dagger or sword. Should they wish, Herod's soldiers can also use a skull-crushing stone, hurl the baby boys off a cliff en masse, or just wrap their fists around the infants' windpipes and strangle them. The cause of death is not important. What matters most is one simple fact. The king of Jews or not, the infant must die. Meanwhile, in Jerusalem, King Herod gazes out a palace window toward Bethlehem, anxiously awaiting confirmation of the slaughter. In the cobbled streets below him, the Roman appointed king sees the crowded bazaars, where vendors sell everything from water and dates to tourist trinkets and roast lamb. The walled city of some 80,000 residents packed into less than a single square mile is a crossroads of the eastern Mediterranean. With one sweep of his eyes, Herod can see visiting Galilean peasants, brightly dressed Syrian women, and the foreign soldiers he pays to wage his battles. These men fight extremely well, but are not Jews and don't speak a word of the Hebrew language. And I will soon be releasing Code Talker by Joseph Bruchak. You can check out right now at Deb on hers. I think it's Deborah Lynn. She's actually covering the book right now. So I highly encourage you to go to her space on the X platform. I think it's on Fridays. As I get the information, I will release it. All right. Herod sighs. Back in his youth, he would never have stood in a window and worried about the future. A great king and warrior such as he would have ordered that a bridle be thrown over his favorite white charger so that he might gallop to Bethlehem and murder the child himself. But Herod is now a man of 69. His massive... All right, you guys, pay attention to the description they give of King Herod and everything that he's going through. Let me go get my lunch out of the microwave. All right, let's continue on. Charger, so that he might gallop to Bethlehem and murder the child himself. But Herod is now a man of 69. His massive girth and incessant medical problems make it physically impossible for him to leave his palace, let alone mount a horse. Now, you guys, I just laid down Trek 20 and 19. It was 20 for our Job journey, and this very thing was addressed in the story of Job, the book of Job. Let's keep going. His bloated face is wreathed in a beard that extends from the bottom of his chin to just below his Adam's apple. On this day, he wears a royal purple Roman-style mantle over a short-sleeved white silk tunic. Normally, Herod prefers soft leather leggings that have been stained purple, but today, even the gentlest bristle of fabric against his inflamed big toe is enough to make him cry out in pain. So it is that Herod, the most powerful man in Judea, hobbles through the palace barefoot. But gout is the least of Herod's ailments. The king of the Jews, as this non practicing convert to the religion likes to be known, is also suffering from lung disease, kidney problems, worms, a heart condition, sexually transmitted diseases. Oh, yes, it gets much worse. And a horrible version of gangrene that has caused his genitals to rot, turn black, and become infested with maggots. Thus, the inability to sit astride, let alone ride a horse. Herod has learned how to live with his aches and pains, but these inability to. Hey, Marcia, thanks for driving through. Girls, good to see your face. You guys can find Marcia MX on the X platform. She's really cool. She does a lot of grok creations. All right, guys, let's get back into this recording from a year ago. We are reading Killing Jesus, A History by Bill O'Reilly and Martin Dugard. I'll remind everyone again, this is a secular book. They refer to Jesus. They'd never refer to Jesus as Jesus the Messiah. They simply refer to him as Jesus of Nazareth, which I'll say it again. I believe that's all he ever wanted to be referred to as. Marcia, thank you again for stopping through. All right, let's continue on. Sit astride, let alone ride a horse. Herod has learned how to live with his aches and pains, but these warnings about a new king in Bethlehem are scaring him. Since the Romans first installed him as ruler of Judea more than 30 years ago, Herod has foiled countless plots and waged many wars to remain king. He has murdered anyone who would try to steal his throne and even executed those only suspected of plotting against him. His power over the locals is absolute. No one in Judea is safe from Herod's executions.
I think just
He has ordered deaths by hanging, stoning, strangulation, fire, the sword, live animals, serpents, beating, and a type of public suicide in which victims are forced to hurl themselves off tall buildings. The lone form of execution in which he has not engaged is crucifixion. That most slow and humiliating of deaths, where a man is flogged and then nailed naked upon a wooden cross in plain sight of the city walls. The Romans are the masters of this brutal art, and they almost exclusively practice it. Herod would not dream of enraging his superiors in Rome by appropriating their favorite form of murder. Herod has 10 wives, or had, before he executed the fiery Miriam for allegedly plotting against him. For good measure, he also ordered the deaths of her mother and of his sons Alexander and Aristobulus. Within a year, he will murder a third male offspring. Small wonder that the great Roman Emperor Caesar Augustus was rumored to have openly commented, "It is better to be Herod's pig than to be his son." But the newest threat, though it comes from a mere infant, is the most dangerous of all. For centuries, Jewish prophets have predicted the coming of a new king to rule their people. So we have an asterisk reference point. So here we go. The Jewish homeland was first known as Israel, a promised land that God offered to his followers. The northern portion of his kingdom fell in 722 BC to the Philistines, while the Babylonians later conquered the southern half. The Roman conquest in 63 BC led to the area around Jerusalem being referred to as Judea. The whole region, including Galilee, was administratively part of the Roman province of Syria, and the terms Israel and Palestine were not used in Jesus' time. All right. I want to totally back up on this, guys. Okay. Did you hear that? All right. And this is confirmed not just in Bill O'Reilly and Martin Dugard's book, it's absolutely confirmed biblically in other texts as well. Let's back up just one little tiny hair bit. There we go. Israel, a promised land that God offered to his followers. The northern portion of his kingdom fell in 722 BC to the Philistines, while the Babylonians later conquered the southern half. The Roman conquest in 63 BC led to the area around Jerusalem being referred to as Judea. The whole region, including Galilee, was administratively part of the Roman province of Syria, and the terms Israel and Palestine were not used in Jesus' time. Israel was once again put into use when the independent Jewish state was founded on May 14, 1948, almost 4,000 years after the first Jews crossed into the Promised Land. They have prophesied 5 specific occurrences that will take place to confirm the new Messiah's birth. The first is that a great star will rise. The second is that the baby will be born in Bethlehem, the small town where the great King David was born 1,000 years before. The third prophecy is that the child must also be a direct descendant of David, a fact that can easily be proven by the temple's meticulous genealogical records. Fourth, powerful men will travel from afar to worship him. Finally, the child's mother must be a virgin. So let's go to the cross reference. In order, the prophecies are Numbers 24:17, Micah 5:2-5, Jeremiah chapter 23, verse 5, and Isaiah chapter 9, verse 7, Psalm 72, chapter 72, verses 10 through 11, and Isaiah chapter 7, verses 13 through 14. And I myself have confirmed these verses as I've read the Bible chronologically. All right, let's keep going. So, this is such an exciting book. I just love it. What troubles Herod most deeply is that he knows the first 2 of these to be true. He might be even more distressed to learn that all 5 have come to pass. The child is from the line of David. Powerful men have traveled from afar to worship him. And his teenage mother, Mary, swears that she is still a virgin despite her pregnancy. He also does not know that the child's name is Yeshua ben Joseph, or Jesus, meaning the Lord is salvation. Herod first learns about Jesus from the travelers who have come to worship the baby. These men are called Magi, and they stop at his castle to pay their respects en route to paying homage to Jesus. They are astronomers, diviners, and wise men who also study the world's great religious texts. Among these books is the Tanakh. So we're going to go down and it's going to explain the order. So in the asterisk section, there are three dominant texts in the Jewish tradition: the Tanakh, the Torah, and the Talmud. The Tanakh constitutes the canonical collection of Jewish scriptures and appears to have been compiled 500 years before the birth of Christ. The Tanakh is also known as the Jewish Bible, while Christians refer to it as the Old Testament. The Torah is comprised of the first 5 books of the Tanakh: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. The Talmud was written almost 600 years later, after the fall of the temple in AD 70. Rabbinical teachings, commentaries, and philosophies were compiled so that they might be passed on in written rather than oral form. Among these books is the Tanakh, a collection of history, prophecy, poetry, and songs telling the story of the Jewish people. The wealthy foreigners travel almost 1,000 miles over rugged desert, following an extraordinarily bright star that shines in the sky each morning before dawn. Where is the one who has been born the King of the Jews? They demand to know upon their arrival in Herod's court. We see his star in the east and have come to worship him. Amazingly, the Magi carry treasure chests filled with gold and the sweet-smelling tree resins, myrrh, and frankincense. These priests are learned, studious men. Theirs is a life of analysis. And so I want to read a cross point real quick because I think I missed it. But and it's back on the other page, I believe, and I think I passed it. But the cross, when it talks about the star that they follow. Yeah, and before I get into that, I mean, this is the part that I just truly, because I had read this for the first time and I had no idea. And I'd always wondered about the Magi, about, the North Star and all of this. And they explain it so beautifully. And I've heard, I've watched other documentaries, read other texts that confirm this data that they present. And they do a great job of citing sources and resources in their literary works. All right, let's continue on. Followed. This addresses that in the reference point at the bottom of the page. In 1991, the Quarterly Journal of the Royal Astronomical Society, Volume 32, pages 389 through 407, noted that Chinese astronomers had observed a long-tailed, slow-moving comet in their skies during March of 5 BC. This Xuxing, or star, hung in the Capricorn region for more than 70 days. This same comet would have been visible in the skies over Persia, home of the Magi, in the hours just before dawn. Due to the Earth's orbital motion, the comet's light would have been directly in front of the Magi during their journey. Hence, they would have truly followed the star, guys. That's amazing information. Let's keep going. Amazingly. So, they are learned, studious men. Theirs is a life of analysis and reason. Herod can conclude only that either the Magi are out of their minds for risking the theft of such a great fortune in the vast and lawless Parthian desert, or they truly believe this child to be the new king. A furious Herod summons his religious advisors. As a secular man, he knows little about Jewish prophecies. Herod insists that these high priests and teachers of religious law tell him exactly where to find the new king. The answer comes immediately in Bethlehem, in Judea.
And as this book is written from a secular standpoint, this is all biblically backed up. And if you're joining me for my RTNT 93, read the New Testament in 93 days, well, we just read about this in the very beginning when we started this journey, RTNT 93, read the New Testament in 93 days. You guys can find that here on the Rumble channel, here on the YouTube channel, X platform, and Facebook. You guys, thank you for hanging with me as I strive to get better with the content and hopefully get the message out. My hope is to do also, remember, we're doing Killing Kennedy, the end of Camelot, Killing Lincoln, the shocking assassination that changed America forever. And those are all by Bill O'Reilly and Martin Dugard, along with this Killing Jesus, A History. Then remember, we released the whole of To Kill a Mockingbird. I'm working on getting all of that uploaded to the Rumble platform and getting it streamlined as well with the thumbnails and everything. So then my hope for the future is right now we're doing RTNT 93. We did our Job journey. That's in its entirety. And that will also be uploaded and I'll be streamlining it, getting, track 1 through 42. We got that finally caught up with the chapters around chapter 20. So I'll just leave that as it is. But the content that's broken up in parts A and part B, I don't want to leave you hanging on. And I thank you all that have followed me so long and have been viewing this content and been faithful viewers. I appreciate you. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if it brings you inspiration, information you never knew you had, or something to think about. That's all we could ever hope for. Please leave any and all feedback in the comment section. Let's continue on to this great literary work.
The teachers whom Herod is interrogating are humble men. They wear simple white linen caps and robes. But the bearded temple priests are a far different story. They dress elaborately in white and blue linen caps with a gold band on the brow, and blue robes adorned in bright tassels and bells. Over their robes they wear caps and purses adorned in gold and precious stones. On a normal day, their garb distinguishes them from the people of Jerusalem. But even in his dissipated state, King Herod is the most regal man in the room by far. He continues to hector the teacher and priests. Where is this so-called King of the Jews? Bethlehem, in the land of Judah. They quote verbatim from the words of the prophet Micah. Some 7 centuries earlier, out of you will come a ruler who will be the shepherd of my people, Israel. Herod sends the Magi on their way. His parting royal decree is that they locate the infant, then return to Jerusalem and tell Herod the child's precise location so that he can venture forth to worship this new king himself. The Magi see through this deceit. The Magi see through this deceit. They never come back.
And good for them. And that's also backed up biblically as well, because we know from the Bible,
All right, guys, we're going to stop right here and we're going to stop this recording.
All right, guys. So I don't need to play the rest of that because we're putting it together now. So here's the second part of chapter 1.
Hey,
Killing
everybody.
Jesus,
Welcome back to
a history.
BBN, Bobina's Book Nook. My name is Regina Connell. Come on in. Welcome to House Connell. And let's dive right back into our book, Killing Jesus, in our Killing series, the book Killing Jesus by Bill O'Reilly and Martin Dugard. So without further ado, we left off with King Herod giving his royal decree to the Magi that they are to find the exact location of the baby Jesus that he's heard so much about, that he fears his kingdom is at risk to, which it is. But anyway, he leaves the royal decree with the Magi before they take their leave of his castle and kingdom, and he tells them that they need to report back to him the exact location of the baby Jesus, pinpointed. And they see, and he goes under the guise that he wants to worship the baby Jesus himself. Well, they see right through that. So let's continue on. We're still in chapter 1. This is the second part, and we will wrap up chapter 1. I hope I'm in chapter 1. I don't know. I might be in chapter 2. Hold on. Let me see. Yeah, we're in chapter 1. So let's keep going, guys. All right, here we go. So it is that time passes, and Herod realizes he must take action. From the windows of his fortress palace, he can see all of Jerusalem. To his left rises the great temple, the most important and sacred building in all Judea, perched atop a massive stone platform that gives it the appearance of a citadel rather than a simple place of worship. The temple is a physical embodiment of the Jewish people and their ancient faith. Okay, guys, we are going to leave it right there at that. You guys, I thank you so much for joining. I did not realize that was so long. So you guys, I will be relaunching that, reviving that along with the other books that we covered that we will be doing future. So you guys hang tight. We will be coming back with more stuff for you guys really soon. We're going to be taking a couple of week break just to get the content right, get everything good and going for the things that are to come. Sorry, I was trying to get those banners down while I was talking. So you guys, this has been the conclusion of Hillbilly Elegy, chapter 15. We did leave some things out, so you guys, please go pick this book up at your earliest convenience. You can find it at Books A Million, Amazon, local library, wherever. More books to come, more things to come. You guys join us tomorrow night for join us tomorrow night for Watchdog Wednesday, West Virginia Wire Watchdog Wednesday. I'm tired. I'm sorry. We got a big day tomorrow. Had a big day today. You guys, I thank you all for joining us. Big Russ has already exited stage right because he's had a long day too. All right, guys, we will see you on the flip flop. Thanks for joining us. Peace out.
Down in the holler where the river's been, where the mountains whisper and the night never ends. I grew up in the shadow of a southern sky, with dirt on my hands and a dream in my eye. The winds may blow and the storms may roll, but the heart of the holler's what keeps me whole.